I would now like to welcome then Hanna and Sonja from our second health project to take over.
Yeah, so hi everybody. Welcome to our presentation. We're going to be presenting our project. Okay, so everybody can see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the title of our project is Improving Early Deterioration Detection Models Used for Patients in Dutch Hospitals. So what we're essentially trying to do is we're trying to improve, validate, or recalibrate these already existing models for patient deterioration, and we're trying to kind of critically evaluate them for implementation in Dutch hospitals. So what does that mean? Which models are we using? So here's a bit of background before we really get into it. So ever since 1999, Muse has been the golden standard for patient deterioration, but 1999 was a long time ago. So we believe that with everything new that we have, all the new algorithms and new knowledge that we have today, that we can come up with something better. And yeah, there was an Epic company in America that actually did come up with something better or not better. That's what we're trying to see now. But they came up with their own deterioration index model using advanced logistic regression. And what we're trying to do is we are trying to compare these two models and see which one performs better on these Dutch hospitals. So on the Dutch hospital that we're working with. And yeah, we're trying to see if the implementation is viable, if we can even implement this in Dutch hospitals. So what we're essentially doing is comparing these two existing models and validating their implementation. So in order to do so, we are working with the ETZ hospital in the Netherlands. So they are giving us all their patient data, and that's the data that we're using for our validation and comparison. And yeah, so we're implementing the EDI model using that data and critically evaluating its performance. And based on their data, we're trying to compare the two models. And also another thing, this DI model was trained using patient data from the US. So, and we don't know if that also works for European patients or not. So that's also one of the tasks that we have. So to recalibrate, to retrain this exact same model, but on Dutch patient data, and seeing if that works any better. So what is actually patient deterioration? So patient deterioration is subcategorized into 3 events, so 3 adverse events. One of them is transfer to the ICU, so an unexpected transfer to the ICU, call of the rapid response team, and death. So we're trying to come up with a model that will predict these 3 events. And we also have to watch out for something called a false alarm fatigue. So that means that when our model has too many false positives, it can become too much. So it takes too many resources then to always go to those patients and treat them when they're not actually deteriorating. So that takes a lot of resources, and also then the nurses might be a bit less responsive to the alarms of the models. If they're constantly going off. So if we look at this on the ROC curve, what we're essentially trying to come up with is a classifier with as many true positives as possible and as little false positives as possible. And that's quite important because of all the resources it takes to treat patients in hospitals and the time.
Yeah, from now on, I will take over from Hannah, and I will talk about the second part of our project mainly. And what we do with that critical evaluation also is we look into patients' demographics. It is very important to see for which patient does the EPIC tool work well and for which it doesn't. For example, for some older patients, it can work better than for some younger patients, or maybe for the cardiology departments, it would work better than for the orthopedics department. And these are some things we are currently busy with. Hannah, could you go for another slide? Yeah. So, but then that was all the first part of the project, to really critically evaluate the tool and see what can we do with it next. And then after that phase is finished, and we will finish it in July, we will dive into the second part of the project, and that would be really adapting the Epic DI tool to the hospital, ETZ hospital. And we will do that by hyperparameters tuning, feature engineering, and maybe even we will also develop a specific model for the Dutch hospital ETZ. Yeah. What are the main challenges we are dealing with in this project? It's that a lot of measurements are correlated, which means that they're not very useful for our machine learning algorithm. Then we are dealing with quite unbalanced data set, as the data we have is collected from the COVID ward. And all the patients, well, most of the patients that were very in bad conditions got the smart patch, which means it's connected with the DI model, which means that our data is a bit biased as well. And as always, as Bram also introduced at the beginning, we are dealing with the high sensitive data and we need to respect some ethical concerns. Hannah, if you could go, yes. So as we are dealing with this highly sensitive data and the patient's privacy is very valued, particularly now in the Netherlands, everywhere, but also here in particular, we are using every time that we are working with this data, we need to authenticate ourselves, and we are strictly working on the virtual machine provided by the hospital, and we are not allowed to download this data on our computers. So Hannah and me have been busy with this project for a previous month. So we're kind of starting at the very beginning of the project still. And so far it has been very good learning experience. And if you have any questions to us about anything, yeah, we would be very happy to answer.
All right. Thank you, Sonia and Hannah.